Hello all, and welcome to the Rails board meeting. Today is Friday, September 3rd, 2022. I'm Alex Mancina, president of the Rails board, and I call this meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sure. Monica Caldecott.
Here.
Rosie Camargo.
Here.
Alice Creason.
Here.
Juanita Harrell.
Here.
Robin Hellenthal.
Here.
Diane Hollister. Here. Renee Leva.
Here.
Jennifer McIntosh.
Here.
Julie Malevich.
Here.
Becky Spradford. Here. Thomas Stagg.
Here.
Beth Tuppin. Alex Mancina.
Here.
Vanessa Villarreal. And Karen Boydick. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Emily. And we'd like to thank the staff of the Peoria Public Library for graciously agreeing to host today's lunch and meeting. We will handle guests and public comments at the same time. Let's start with guests in Peoria. Deirdre?
Yes, Deirdre Brennan Rails.
Monica Harris, Rails.
Emily Feister Rails.
Wesley Smith, Rails.
Laura Keys, Dunlap Public Library. Rebecca Seaborn, Farmington Public Library. Slaughter Rails.
Dennis Danowski, Fort Antonio.
Are there any public comments in Peoria? Hearing none, let's go to guests in Burr Ridge.
Joe Philippek, Rails.
Mark Hatch, Rails.
Are there any public comments in Burr Ridge? If not, on to the State Library. Any guests?
So I'm Greg McCormick. I'm sorry. I couldn't hit the mute button because of the text that was popping up on my screen. So, and there are no guests or public comment other than me.
Thanks. All right, Emily, would you please read the names of any guests via Zoom?
Wes, can you read that? I'm sorry. Are there any guests via Zoom? Oh, I'm sorry.
Mary Witt. Ryan Ebel. Dan Bostrom. Leila Heath. Sharon Swanson and Mark Hatch.
What about there? And Brad Porter.
Yeah, this is Brad Porter with Lauterbach and Amon. Hi, everybody.
Still shows as
That's okay. We know Brad. Thanks, Brad. All right, did we get everybody?
Any public comments on Zoom? Okay, Emily, did we receive any public comments via email?
We did not.
In that case, we will move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to move any items to the regular agenda for further discussion? If not, may I have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda?
So moved, Alice Creason.
Second,
Alex?
Diane.
And Diane, thank you. Emily, would you please call roll?
Monica Caldecott.
Yes.
Rosie Camargo.
Yes.
Alice Creason.
Yes.
Juanita Harrell.
Yes.
Robin Hellenthal.
Yes.
Diane Hollister.
Yes.
Renee Leva.
yes.
Jennifer McIntosh.
Yes.
Julie Malevich.
Yes.
Becky Spradford.
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Alex Mancina.
Yes.
Karen Boydick.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Sharon Swanson with the Rails Financial Report.
Good afternoon, everyone. The August 31st unassigned general fund cash and investment balance of 18.8 million would fund approximately 18.1 months of operations. It was a rather uneventful month, so I'll make this very short and sweet. The revenues through August of just over 1.8 million were approximately $1.7 million below budget. And this was primarily due to not having yet received any fiscal year 23 area per capita grant payments. And this was partially offset by above budget reimbursement revenues from earlier than expected group purchase billings. The Monday after I finalized my report, September 19th, Rails received the first 2 Live and Learn payments from our fiscal year 23 APC grant. And this was only 4 days after they were vouchered by the state. So the state has really picked up their payments and continue to improve. And these payments totaled $2,145,000. Investment income was $62,184 through August, which already exceeds the total investment income received for the entire fiscal year 21. So that's quite impressive. We had budgeted a conservative 0.423% rate, but rates have been running at an average of 2.016% during the month of August. And this was, of course, due to the Federal Reserve's actions to raise interest rates in a very historically aggressive fashion to combat inflation. The fair market value of Rails' series of treasury notes increased by $5,062 during the month of August due to our having had the first of our 4 maturities in our laddered series of investments. The fair market value of when this maturity occurred, we moved the funds from that one treasury note that matured to 4 one-year CDs at 2.95% interest with PMA, since interest rates are so volatile right now and the rates for CDs were more favorable than treasury notes at this point in time. Expenditures through August of almost $3.1 million were approximately $134,000 below budget. And nearly all major cost categories were under the budgeted amounts with the exceptions of equipment, rental, repair, and maintenance expenditures. And this was due to several annual contract renewals that occurred in July and August, as well as professional association. Oh, is there a question?
No.
As well as professional association membership dues expenditures. And this was also due to several annual staff and organizational membership renewals that renewed in July. The majority of the under budgeted amounts were due to a lag in billings or timing differences between the budget and when the actual expenditures occurred, with the one exception of personnel. Personnel was under budget, mostly because of the newly created consortial services supervisor position, which was budgeted to be hired, but is now in the process of being filled now that we're a little bit into the year. Delivery department expenditures through August of nearly $560,000 were almost $73,000 below budget. And this was due to a normal lag in receiving invoices and processing payments for our delivery outsourcing vendor. And that's about all that I have. May I answer any questions?
This is Karen. I have a question.
Yes, Karen.
On the check voucher register,
yes,
for Overdrive, you have magazine purchases for $80,000, like every magazine in the world, or is this for a year, or what? Why is it so? That's a lot.
That's for a consortium.
Yes, electronic content consortia that we do the accounting for. So it's just a pass through.
How many libraries is it? Do you know, Sharon? Does anybody know how many? There's a lot of libraries.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, there are. I don't have an exact count, but it's well over 150, I believe, libraries that are part of that.
Is this an annual amount or a monthly amount or quarterly?
I don't think it's annual. This is the ECC, the Electronic Content Consortium. We help them with their billing, and it's a very large consortium of libraries throughout Illinois. There's even Southern California.
Okay. Why is it under magazine purchases then? and not
Because it
under.
must be part of Hulu, I get it, or.
No, Overdrive,
It's
Overdrive. It was Overdrive. They added magazines and a lot of libraries switched from other platforms to do all their magazines through Overdrive. It's like a huge new thing.
Not Hulu, I meant Hulu.
I knew that, I just didn't know if this was gonna be a month on every month.
Not our money.
No, I just, it's a lot of money, I just, because magazines, it's like every magazine ever written. you buy. That's that's how I read it.
But it's a copy for every
Yeah.
library.
Yeah, okay, but so it won't be every month, right, Sharon?
No, it won't. There is an amount that comes in every month, but it's between $30,000 and about $50,000. And that's just their content purchases. So this was like a one-time purchase that came through for magazines that they did.
Okay, that's all I wanted, thank you.
We do a lot of.
You're
this,
welcome, Karen.
as part of our, what we
Yeah.
can do. that-
Right, right.
That's because we have the ability, the finance department that can do it. Did you have other questions?
No, that was it.
No, I'm glad you're at, I look through the check register myself always,
Yeah.
just for, big items, so I'm not surprised you asked about that one.
Yeah.
This was the month of the LSAT.
Some of it I understood,
check,
that
okay.
one I did not,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Good, well, that's good.
Glad that we could clarify, Karen. Any other
Okay.
questions from anyone else?
All right. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Next, I'll start us off with reports. My only report this month is regarding the Executive Director search timeline from the Executive Committee. The direct timeline is included in your packet and will be discussed later on the agenda. The committee reports were included in the agenda packet as well. Are there any questions regarding any of the reports?
I had
Oh,
one
go ahead.
question on the advocacy committee. Robin, it said that you're having trouble contacting the St. Andrew Catholic School, like principal?
That was from last month, yeah.
Yeah, so have you tried contacting the priest of the school?
I was gonna report on this in my report.
Oh, okay.
But I can, because I have an update to, but I can talk about it now if you want.
Do you want to wait to the report?
Okay, we can wait, I just wondered who you, if you could try the priest, but, okay. Never mind, I'm done, Alex.
I'll talk about it during my.
Any other questions about committee reports?
Alex, this is Jennifer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to add that the policy committee will be meeting on October 3rd at 10 o'clock to discuss the election process, some changes to the board election process and remote work policies. So all are invited to attend if they'd like to.
Great, thank you. Jenny.
Sorry. 1 second.
Aliens are coming out of it.
Just us. Are we good?
Thank you.
Someone else is getting feedback, so just turn your audio should be off.
Yeah, if you're not speaking.
I'm not on Zoom. I just have the agenda. No, we just have the agenda pulled up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It happens all the time, unfortunately.
Maybe it's somebody in your space.
I don't know, I
Okay,
hear it.
All right, next we have Deirdre with the Rails monthly report.
Thank you. So I would just like to start off by saying that the board has received a thank you note from Sharon Swanson. And I just wanted to read to you what she said. Thank you for the beautiful living plant and for your individual expressions of sympathy. I have constant reminders of why Rails is a truly great place to work and serve. That's sincerely Sharon. So I'll just start off with St. Andrew's School then, since that already came up. So I have continued to try to contact the principal and to no avail. So I did call Jenny Slaney up, and Jenny is the director in Sterling, which is where the school is located. And she is also the staff person for the Rock River Library Consortium that the school is in, along with, I don't know how many libraries, not very many, but in Sterling, Rock River, Rock Falls, and Dixon, and I forget the other community. Jennifer. Anyway, so she said that that the school is really in very dire circumstances. That there are 2 Catholic grade schools in Sterling. And she has long been somewhat surprised that there were 2 because it's not easy to support. I mean, you need the enrollment, and the enrollment has really been dropping a lot in St. Andrew's School. They have moved, a lot of people the parents have moved their children to the other school, which name I forget. She has already turned off their access to the Rock River Consortium. And she, so we were talking a little bit about what will happen next with St. Andrews, and I hadn't thought of contacting the priest, but I can in the parish, but I can certainly do that. I'm after talking to Jenny, it does seem like it's kind of hopeless, unfortunately, but that this is just. But she did say that she would be very surprised if the school was even open next year. So, but there's no rush for us to do anything, so I'll try that. I had the thought, which I asked Jenny, maybe some of the other school librarians could have some, in the other Catholic or grade schools that are in the consortium, maybe they could have some influence, but she said they've tried and there's, it's happening. So, but anyway, that's the update to that. Okay. So anyway, you have my written report, and I did just want to update you on a couple things. We did have, as I said, that on September 14th, Anne and Monica and I met with the RSA Executive Committee about their financial independence plan. I have since then, a couple of things have happened. I have contacted a lawyer who works at Ansel Glick, who is sort of specializes in this kind of governance work. And he's done this before, and so he's going to assist us in helping, hopefully, RSA to convert from being a nonprofit 501c3 to being an intergovernmental instrumentality, which is what the other LSAPs are, because that will enable them to be to participate in IMRF. I think that's all that. Yes, she did. So it was, and then yesterday, Monica and I did stop by on our way down to visit Alyssa Williams, who was here previously. She's the director in Morton, and she's also the president of the RSA board, and had a good conversation. And so the next thing that we're trying to do, Rails, is find a facilitator to convene a meeting among RSA board members and Prairie Cat board members to pursue any possible options of them merging, whatever that it might turn out to be. So that's the update on that. Yesterday, Monica and Layla and I attended a portion of the ILA executive board meeting. They asked us to attend to answer questions about two of our legislative proposals, the one related to the statewide online resources and the one related to the Records Retention Act changes, so streamlining that, which would help, not just libraries, but libraries at least initially. And there was a lot of questions, but a lot of support. The next thing that happens is that the board's going to vote on priorities. And I want to thank Becky in particular for being a very avid proponent of.
It was just kind of a lot of lull in the conversation. And I was like, they're gonna be sending out a thing to vote, so I better speak up.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
So, and then the only other thing that I wanted to point out was that the quarterly LSAP reports are attached and they're always very interesting.
They are.
Yeah. Happy to answer any questions from anybody. Nice to have guests today.
Deirdre, I don't know if this is a question or I hope it doesn't come off as gossipy, but I'm just interested in what's going on with the trustee at Niles Public Library area. I caught something in the news and I'm just not understanding the context of that.
Well, I'm so glad you asked because that was definitely going to come up at some point. I can tell you what I know, and of course Rosie is here. She's a staff person at Niles, Maine. Did you see the article in the newspaper, Monica? That was in the Tribune. Yes. So what that newspaper article said was that after the Secretary of State acted as he has recently, legislation authorized him to appoint or to fill a vacancy when the library board has been unable to fill the vacancy. The Secretary of State appointed someone, they were going to swear him in, and then there was a restraining order was issued because the trustee of the Niles Maine board has filed a lawsuit, I guess, saying that the appointment is illegal because the law does not apply to retroactive vacancies. So that's what was in the newspaper article, but Greg McCormick is here and, I don't want to speak for you, Greg, at all, but that's just what I read in the newspaper. I wanted to be sure that all the board members knew that. Do you have anything further to add, Greg, by any chance?
That's the gist of it. And it's because this is a legal matter that's still under consideration. It's really inappropriate for me to speak about that at this moment. So.
Well, that's why I wanted to put that up in the article. But as the other thing that the article said was that that the Secretary of State's legal, people are working on it. So, so that's what I know, Monica. Does that answer your question?
She shook her head, yes.
Oh,
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Sorry, you look very far away from here, Monica.
We took extra distance classes for our close-up classes.
All right. If there are no other questions about the Rails report, next we have Monica Harris and Mark Hatch with the Rails delivery update.
And I am here in Peoria, but Mark is going to deliver this presentation from Burr Ridge. So I will pass it on to Mark there.
Okay, bear with me 1 second. I'm just getting everything set up. Great. Hopefully everyone can see my screen and hopefully everyone can hear me okay.
Yes.
In your package, because I do wear 2 hats within the organization, I also manage the facility side along with delivery. Annually, I like to prepare a facility summary that I can send out to the board so that you guys get an understanding of what's going on with all of the facilities as well. And I'll just touch on a few of the areas. That particular report is documents all of our lease arrangements as far as when our leases expire, when our monthly expenses, our operating expenses, it's just a at a glance document that I think is somewhat important. I utilize that. It helps me keep track of when our leases are expiring. To just reference a couple of things, the Burr Ridge building and then also the Cove Valley building are the two properties that we do own. The other properties are all lease buildings. What we like to try and do is have annual leases, except unfortunately within Bolingbrook, we're required to do a 2-year lease, but our goal is to do an annual lease across the board, with our facilities. One of the things, because it's been a while, we're actually working on getting appraisers done on the Burr Ridge property and then also Cove Valley. The last time we did an appraisal on Burr Ridge was in 2017, so it's definitely time to do another one. And it was even longer than that for the Cove Valley property. We're also working on getting a facility assessment done for the Burr Ridge building. The last time we did that was in 2019, so numbers have definitely changed, so it's time to do another facility assessment as well. So I wanted to now jump over to the delivery side. Our numbers for FY 2022, 8.9 million items were processed. That came from 280,000 containers. That's what we processed, and then we shipped out another 286,000 containers. A couple of things just to point out briefly. In Bolingbrook, that consists of our Geneva and Sherwood hubs. Within Geneva, we process 1 million items, and within Sherwood, that was 1.1 million items. Elmhurst, which is our outsourced vendor, Continental Transport Logistics, I usually just say CTL. They process over 50% of our overall volume, when that totaled like 5 million items that they process. That's 2.1 million from our Wheeling, and that's primarily majority of the CCS libraries. 2.9 million from Burr Ridge, and majority of those are the Swan libraries. The remaining hubs, Cove Valley, East Peoria, and Rockford, process the remainder 1.8 million items. This is also in, oops, let's see, went too far. Okay, great. There's another item in your packet that you received from me. That was a document that was prepared by Grant Halter, our forgot what is his title? I forgot Grant's title. He's a guru. And
He's a guru.
So I have to give Grant kudos because he does an outstanding job with preparing these documents. And just wanted to point out just a couple of things on that. So if you look back, it's a year-by-year comparison that he created. And if you look back to 2015 to 2018, we averaged like 9.3 to 9.5 million items. In 2019, we dropped about 500,000 items down to, which equated to about 6% or 9 million items that we processed in 2019. Then naturally in 2020, we took a major hit because of the pandemic. We were closed. We actually shut down and our delivery operation for 3 months from March to June of that particular year. And in 2022, we've somewhat recovered and on track with our totals from our last full year of processing was 2019, so which was the 9 million items. We're at 8.9 million items. That's relatively close. So I think we're back on track with the numbers from 2019. So one of the things out of that 280 some thousand containers, we've averaged about 25 to 27 items per container, which is great. Except when you look at our Elmhurst, which is the Burr Ridge and CCS wheeling area, they were averaging about 37 items per container, which is, I think, is great that they're able to put that much items into a particular container. I'll switch down now to vehicle purchases because we can't do our routes without vehicles. But we also continue to struggle with getting vehicles. We have supply chain issues. I really don't have a timeline on when we're going to be able to order vehicles. I've been working with Morrow Brothers Ford, who is going to be, who's going to have the contract, the CMS contract. The only thing that they can tell me at this point is once they do have the contract and we're able to start to purchase vehicles, it's going to be 10 to 12 month turnaround, along with we can expect a major price increase because like everything else, the vehicles has gone up tremendously as well. So as far as our current fleet, we continue to evaluate them and make the necessary repairs just to keep those vehicles running. I wanted to briefly talk about efficiency within the delivery department. We're always big on trying to do things the best and most efficient way possible. We did contract with GeoMark to analyze all of our delivery hubs, all 4 delivery hubs, and they concluded that East Peoria was the only service center that actually required a major reroute, which actually went into effect on August the 1st. We're very happy with the results. That particular reroute is going to save us about $35,000 to $40,000 annually. So I'm very excited about that. What they recommended for the other service centers was primarily to optimize the routing, just change the order in which stops were being serviced. We've already rerouted the Bolingbrook operation, and those actual changes go into effect on August the 26th. It's not a lot of savings, but every little bit helps. We're going to, for the 2 routes that we're actually going to realize the savings on, we will save about an hour per day times 5 days a week, times 50 weeks, so it definitely adds up over time. We also have the analysis from Coal Valley and Rockford that we haven't actually started to analyze as of this point, but that's on the agenda for us to look at that and then see what type of savings we can realize within those operations as well. Other areas that we've always focused on to try and gain additional efficiency is creating the CDPs or the community delivery partnerships. That is where a host library will agree to receive the material for a smaller library that may not receive 5-day-a-week delivery. That helps us tremendously. We've got 152 host libraries that receive material for 256 other libraries. That translates into Rails not having to deliver to an additional 256 locations throughout the year, along with the fact that the participant now is entitled to 5-day-a-week delivery in a roundabout way. So there are criteria that have to be set up or agreed upon between both parties, but these criteria are small, and the biggest one is the host notifying the participant that they have material to be picked up. The participant then just has to go retrieve their material. It's a win-win for everybody, I think. I love the program. I think it works quite well. Another area that we focus on quite a bit is our van on demand. We have like 120 locations set up under van on demand. That is where service is only rendered when there's material to be either picked up or delivered. That saves us tremendously because of the fact that it's not a scheduled pickup. It's only as needed. So that is very, very helpful. It's easy for me to budget because I'm scheduled to pick up on 1 of 2 days. So I can now budget for those 2 days and I can always come under if I don't have to service the location. So that works out extremely well as well. And then the last thing that we always like to do, not necessarily the last thing, but one of the things I just wanted to touch on was, the evaluation of our delivery frequency. I think it's important we do the delivery count 4 times a year. We utilize those counts to actually get an understanding to make sure that the libraries are actually receiving the service that they're entitled to. So, I'm sorry, is there a question? Okay, so it's important that we evaluate the volume that's transported because if a library could currently be on 2 days a week delivery, but they're sending out 20 containers a day, they actually probably we need to increase their service to 4 or 5 days a week. So it's important that we evaluate the volume that comes across throughout the year. I also wanted to talk about our internal automation. Phase 1 is complete with the check mark. You see we're complete with phase 1. Phase 1 was using the iPads on the street level just to capture our pre-trip inspection forms, our incident reports, vehicle accident reports, that type of data. So at this point now, we're ready to transition into phase 2, which is a lot more detailed. That is where we will actually capture all of the route information that is currently being retrieved by our routes that's currently on paper. So that would actually be the arrival time, the number of containers that were dropped off, number of containers that were received. All of that information will now be in the tablet as well. Phase 3 naturally is going to be our report writer to how we can get all of that information out. And that's much later on down the road. But phase 2, we're anticipating possibly the end of October. We're rolling out phase 2. So I'm very excited that that's literally right around the corner. That pilot is going to start off extremely slow. We need to do train the trainer type of environment in all of our service centers where we do have a lot of individuals that may not be tech savvy, that we have to slowly introduce the product to. But once we get that rolled out, I think that's going to go just as smooth as phase 1. So I have to give a special thank to Wayne Dixon, who is our programmer, that is doing an outstanding job. We meet with him every other week, and we're impressed each and every time that he provides an update to the delivery managers. So that is my report, my brief delivery report, and I'm available to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Mark, I have a couple questions or comments.
Yes.
So I was very interested in the delivery statistics. I thought that it would have decreased a lot more during 2020. I mean, because we were completely shut down for, as you said, 3 months. I do remember though that the interesting, feedback that we got from the consortia was that polls were very strong, that people were, because you couldn't really browse. So when we did start delivering again, I think there were a lot more holds maybe than normal. So I found it really, I find this very fascinating. I was sure it was going to be much more dire than it actually is.
Yeah, if I could speak to that a little bit, just one thing that we have heard from libraries anecdotally is that a lot of libraries are at about 80% of their pre-COVID surf rate. That varies, of course, by library. Some are absolutely back to where they were pre-COVID. Some are doing much less than 80% in terms of what they're surfing. But the fact that the numbers are back up at 8.9 million, in terms of delivery does show, we think, a change in how people are using the library, at least at this point, and how they are requesting materials and finding it rather than just on-shelf discovery. So Mark, do you want to add anything to that piece?
No, that was perfect.
I'm also very intrigued by this increase in the number or changes in the number of items in the bins. I mean, the bins haven't changed size. And I'm trying to imagine them like cramming things into the
We
bin.
do.
Yeah, we did.
We get very clever with how we have to. I know that for our
Sideways.
side in public libraries, what we've noticed is that I've been through 2 libraries with renovations. And that's why we use Rails so much. In renovations, in order to make space, we have to remove shelving. And in order to do that, we make sure that if we remove certain number of books from our shelves, we make sure through the catalog that book is available at another library before we remove it from our shelves. And so I know for us, it's a big plus, because during COVID, a lot of libraries took the opportunity to renovate. And so knowing that patrons could still ask for their materials through other libraries, like Rails, meant a lot to us.
Interesting.
Mark, I want to ask a question about, because I was showing it to Rosie while you were talking, that number you had about the libraries that host to be delivery sites, what was that number again?
The community.
You had a nicer name for it than I had.
Community delivery partnership. There's
Right.
152 host libraries.
It's my library is a host library, right? Okay, so I was showing it to Rosie because Niles doesn't host, which I thought was interesting. And at LaGrange, we host, I was just showing her on L2. You can look it up. We host the hospital, the schools, a whole bunch of different ones through our location. I'm just surprised there weren't more doing it, because I know for the LaGrange staff, and we're not a big library, it's nothing. We just put them on a shelf and they send out an email and somebody gets it when they can. I've been the one from the school to go to the library to get it. Maybe we can advertise that more.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling you, I know for a fact the school loves that they can get anything 5 days a week. They don't have to wait to get a delivery. And for our school district, the office is in LaGrange Park, but each individual school is allowed to pick which library. So even though my school district is technically in LaGrange Park, LaGrange, the elementary school that's in LaGrange across the street, can get it at LaGrange. It's just so nice. It's something we should be advertising.
How did the library sign up for that?
I think. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is to, if you're interested in becoming a host, the easiest thing to do is to put a ticket through the help desk. That would be routed to the appropriate service center manager, who can then do the investigation, because what we have to do is we need both parties to agree. We need both parties to agree that the participant has to agree to retrieve their material, and the host has to be agreeable to receiving it and then notifying when material comes in. We also have to make sure that the participant is no more than 5 miles away. We don't want someone having to drive 45 miles to pick up their books and things of that nature. So we have certain criteria that are in place that both parties have to agree on. But we thought 5 miles was a good radius, for a library to travel to retrieve their material. So the easiest way to do it is to just place a ticket in the help desk, and we'll take it from there. We will contact the participant along with the host, and hopefully we can make a deal.
This is Becky, and I think there was an opportunity from Rails, the larger, not just Mark, to get this information out to our smaller libraries and our school libraries and our special libraries, that this is even an option to start the conversations. Because I feel like there are places that don't even know they can go ask. So yes, it's great for the libraries to say, hey, we do this, and that's fine, but there are, especially all the work we're doing with school libraries and special libraries, this is our chance to get that word out from saying, hey, we're here to help you. I know that totally fits with our strategic plan. So, and we can help facilitate those conversations, because it's like, Rosie, you're like, I don't even know where to start. And like, you're a school liaison, like you know, it's hard. So thank you though, Mark, for bringing that up.
Oh, those are great ideas. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. One of the things, if I can also add, is the delivery service managers, it is part of their responsibility to actually seek out locations, because we review our routing quite a bit. We look and see if there's a smaller library that is in the vicinity of a public library that is receiving 5-day-a-week delivery. Can we make a partnership? Can we make a deal? So we actually do, in a roundabout way, we are also searching within our database, within our routing, to see if we can actually create that. A lot of the problems is the schools usually don't have the ability to retrieve the material. That has always been the downfall for a lot of these schools that say, I can't do that. You know, I can't go retrieve that information, you know, I can't, I'm sorry, not the information, but the material. I can't retrieve that material. So that has always been our dilemma when we're trying to establish these, you know, sometimes libraries, we've even worked it out where we've asked the host library, because they may have a van delivery, to deliver it to the school. So we like to try and get involved with that as much as possible to see if we can also help facilitate something like that.
Yeah, Mark, that procedure is exactly what benefits Vernon Hills High School, our local public library, Cook Memorial Public Library in Libertyville and Vernon Hills. They're our host, and they drive a van every day between their two branches. And if either of the high schools have materials, we've asked them for ILL, they'll drop them off here. It's amazing, and we're very grateful for our partners.
Great, thank you. Good to hear.
Mark, this is Tom. I have a question for you about ergonomics. That huge increase in some of the bins, is that causing any weight issues for your handlers?
That's always a good question. You know, our policy is always state that a container cannot be, you know, be heavier than 40 pounds. When you're increasing the number of containers, usually they're small items. So it hasn't negatively impacted the overall weight of the container. So from an ergonomic standpoint, the biggest thing that we always have to contend with is when they're loading things too high and they go above their green zone, which is above their shoulders when they're loading things. But overall, we've been very, very blessed where we haven't had a lot of issues. As long as we continue to do what we're supposed to do, things seem to work out quite well.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark. Next, we are on to the State Library. Greg?
Well, good afternoon. I want to start off by talking a bit about the Talking Book and Braille service. And I'm pleased to announce that we've waited several years now to receive the equipment because of the pandemic to move that service to a duplication on demand service. We received that equipment a few weeks ago, and we have piloted various tests this week with patrons. And it has really been a success so far, where we can have, instead of individual cartridges with a book title, the cartridges will hold up to 20 book titles that will be mailed to patrons. So it's really an efficient way to distribute those. We will be speaking next month to the Illinois chapter of the National Federation of the Blind here in Illinois regarding the service. And you can also expect our public libraries in the state, at least initially, can also be expecting to receiving more information about the program for possible dissemination locally or sharing it with patrons, because certainly that's probably the best contact point to try to grow readership and participation in that program across the state. But we're very pleased with that movement on that. School libraries, the deadline for the school grant program, or school per capita per student really, grant program is upcoming. That's October 15th. We'll be sending reminders out to everyone. The library development group advised me this morning that they feel that we have probably a third of the anticipated applications in-house already. Certainly the library systems have historically played a role in sharing that information with the schools and make sure that we get the most complete participation as possible. And I know that the system is working too on further efforts in identifying activity and issues with school libraries within the system service area. Earlier today, or it was to occur earlier today, all public libraries should have received the notice regarding the availability of the public library per capita grant forms. Those will be due January 30th of 2023. We'll obviously be sending out further reminders of those, but we are moving forward with that. And also a reminder regarding Live and Learn construction grants. We'll be sending further information out about those. The applications are available. Those are due January 15. We are awaiting, and I know the board will take action here in a bit, or review the system annual report information. We'll be awaiting those for review here at the State Library. Regarding system funding, we expect that the largest payment from the General Revenue Fund will be processing next week. I don't know if it will have a 4-day turnaround, but and right after that, there will be another Live and Learn payment released as well. So I think that's good news for the library systems. As noted in the executive director's report, it made mention of the State Library Advisory Committee. The next meeting is scheduled for October 27th. We've begun planning for that meeting with chair and vice chair of the committee, the chair being Dave Barry, who is past president of Rails. And I believe yesterday we came or received what are probably the last names for who would be appointed to the subcommittee on the unserved. So, which will be a subcommittee of the State Library Advisory Committee. And we will be getting that information out to everyone regarding that. So I think that is all the information I have for today, unless there are questions.
And then Jennifer has her hand up. Go ahead,
Hi
Jennifer.
there. Just had a comment on the service updates for Talking Book Braille programs. If you weren't including academic libraries in your communications, I would encourage that. We definitely get questions and refer patrons to those services, and they're either coming to our library, the academic library, or they're going to, like the Access and Accommodations office on campus. And I mean, obviously every college is, kind of structured differently, but it would be great if there was at least somebody.
Oh, we would be glad to reach out. So yeah,
Okay.
that is an overlooked service in the state by far. I mean, because when you look at who's technically eligible and how many people are actually enrolled, it's a matter of just getting the word out better to everyone.
There's just so many people who are re-engaging with being a reader when they enter college. They haven't really, they're kind of the necessity to be a reader becomes very present in their life, possibly for it's got an inactive part of their life that's kind of coming back online. I think we're identifying deficiencies. We know that like only a small portion of people who actually need an accommodation even identify, but the more we just present them with information, they're more likely to step up and take the resources they need. So
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Greg. All right, we're on to new business. And first up, we have the annual report. Deirdre?
Yeah, thank you. So, so you have in your packet the annual report. Obviously, we do this every year. And it is details, there's a narrative that has a lot of information about what Rails accomplished during the fiscal year. So it's important to remember that this report runs through June. It's not running, doesn't run through December or now, or so there's some things that you might think, we did that a long time ago, but it was in the fiscal year, or wait, what about this thing that was that last month? So just to clarify that. So part of the annual report is the audit. We'll be hearing about that also shortly. So this really does detail all of the things that, well, not all, but like the major activities and accomplishments through for the fiscal year. And I'll just give you some of what I think are the highlights, and happy to, of course, talk about any of it. And I want to thank Mary Witt and the entire executive team for writing this in collaboration. Although Mary is the chief writer. So I guess, first of all, I would say that I think we've finally feel like our services are kind of post-COVID. Just the fact that we're here today is, I think, in Peoria, an indication of that. And I think, some of the services that were, idled or, not so active during COVID have really bounced back. I would say that, Find More Illinois is a prime example. There's a lot of growth in that during FY22. Also, Explore More Illinois, and that's really about to, I think, burst forth because not in this annual report, but it will be in next year's, I'm sure, because we're in talks with some of the museums in the park in Chicago about them becoming part of our program. But anyway, that's for next year. But anyway, those services which really weren't being used, particularly going to museums, et cetera, have really come back. And I want to say that it isn't the Peoria Riverside Museum, the number one attraction. We had a lot of staff changes, pretty much our entire finance department turned over, except for Sharon, right? Yeah, so that, and she handled that amazingly well. Get a new manager and having to hire all the new staff, and I think that was really big. Obviously completed the strategic plan. This is written in the format of the previous strategic plan because that's what was in effect at that point. I think this was also when we started our school data project. So that's been, that's ongoing, but just being able to do that and getting Jeanette on board was huge. I guess, also I would draw attention to the expansion of the My Library Is campaign. I think that is being used by more and more types of libraries, more and more libraries. Great work that CE, that the CE department has done throughout COVID and now beyond. I think I hope you'll read this. It's really kind of amazing everything that everybody does every year. And I want to thank the staff for all the hard work and on behalf of the members. And I think, I know that the members really appreciate that. So any questions about it? Anything jump out at anybody that you'd like to hear more about?
All right. If there are no questions, Deirdre, may I have a motion for approval of the narrative report as part of the Rails FY22 annual report submitted to the State Library?
This is Becky, so moved.
Becky,
Karen,
thank you.
second.
Thank you, Karen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next, we have Sharon with the audit report.
Thank you, Alex. We have completed the 11th annual financial audit of Rails, which is my first time through in my current position. If anyone has a bucket of Gatorade, I'll take it. Everything went well as always, and we have a clean opinion as always. And I'd like to introduce Brad Porter, one of the principals at Lauterbach and Amen, and the point person who oversaw our audit. Brad will deliver the report of our fiscal year 2022 audit. I did want to mention beforehand that we are asking for your acceptance of this report. The reason for asking for your acceptance instead of your approval is to avoid giving the impression that Lauterbach and Amen is under our personal supervision. They are an independent accounting firm, and this would give the impression that their independence has been greatly impaired. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Brad.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good deal. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brad Porter, or Zoom 5 LNA for short, as it shows on the computer screen here. But I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this afternoon to share the results of our fiscal year 2022 audit process. Before I begin, I would like to give a very, very special thank you to Sharon and the team for all of their efforts this year. They've been a joy to work with over the last few years, and I know our team has nothing but glowing things to say about our interactions and how much they prioritize the audit on any given day. So very appreciative of their efforts. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Brad.
As part of the audit process, we issue 3 pieces of required communication. And at this point, I will go ahead and share my screen with you so that we can review each of these items very briefly. I know there's a lot of material here as part of our audit. We're happy to answer any questions on a lot of the specifics, at any point following my presentation here today. So the first piece of required communication is what we call our Sas114 letter. In accordance with Statement on Auditing Standard number 114, we are required to state whether or not we had any disagreements or difficulties that we had encountered throughout our audit process. And as you can see here, just confirming everybody does see the letter on the screen. Great. I've highlighted 2 specific sentences here. You will find we've encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management, and we are pleased to report that no such disagreements arose during the course of our audit. So again, kudos to the team for that. Jumping into the actual annual financial report, or more commonly known as your audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022. There are a couple of key areas that I'd like to highlight throughout this document, the first of which can be found on page 1. This is easily the most important page within your audit document. In addition to stating your responsibility as management of Rails, which is to ultimately ensure that your auditors are provided a clean set of financial statements to work with, we go on to state what our responsibility is for the financial statements, and that is to generate an opinion on the financial statements provided to us. I'm happy to report, as Sharon had alluded to, we have issued a clean opinion for fiscal year 2022. That is more commonly known as an unmodified opinion, which states that as your auditors, we believe that the financial statements are free from any material misstatement, and that there are sound internal controls in place over the multiple functions that we test in terms of our walkthroughs, such as cash receipting, disbursements, payroll, financial reporting, etc. Turning to page 5, I'd just like to highlight a very important section to you as a board. I'm the first to admit that sometimes the financial statements can be quite difficult to understand and interpret. So this section here is going to really allow you to have a narrative analysis of your highlights for the fiscal year. This is what we call our management's discussion and analysis. Again, that can be found on pages 5 all the way through 12. A lot of very great information here. It'll include comparative analysis from the previous fiscal year, charts, graphs, etc. So I would encourage you to spend most of your time and energy there. I did just want to touch on our overall changes in fund balance for our 2 primary reporting funds for fiscal year 2022, and that can be found on page 20 of your audit. As you can see, I have highlighted down below our net change in fund balance, which essentially represents your increase, or in this case, we had minor decreases across our 2 funds for fiscal year 2022. So I'd like to highlight our general fund had about a $31,000 reduction to our overall fund balance, which is actually less than 1% of our total, ending the year with about 20.5, just over $20.5 million in accumulated fund balance. On the capital projects front, you can see we've got that line item here, capital outlay expenses for $63,000 approximately, ending the year with about $20.35 million in accumulated reserves. The last piece of required communication that we would typically discuss during the course of any one of these board presentations would be what we call a management letter. And a management letter is intended to convey any best practices that we see in the industry, any upcoming accounting pronouncements that may impact Rails, and ultimately anything that kind of falls outside the scope of the audit itself that we feel warrants the board's attention. As you can see on the screen here, we've issued a no management letter for fiscal year 2022. This is simply a memo indicating that we had no current or prior recommendations as it related to our fiscal year 2022 or 2021 audits. So that in and of itself, I think, says a lot about how staff prioritizes the audit process. We're communicating multiple points throughout the course of the year to ensure that come audit time, we have kind of a well-oiled machine. So I certainly want to thank the team again for all of their efforts, and I'm happy to open it up for any questions, comments, or concerns.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Brad. I did want to jump in and just add a couple of things about the specifics from year to year. So our net position increased nearly 2.3 million from fiscal year 21, and this is primarily due to the increase in the IMRF pension plan earnings, where we Rails are in a rare and very enviable position of having a net pension asset instead of a net pension liability, which means that Dee's pension number one that she will be collecting very, very soon is very, very well secured. And IMRF as a whole is 98.8% funded, but Rails's individual employer plan is over 131% funded. So we are in a very, very good position. And the growth of this net pension plan asset from fiscal year 21 was primarily from growth in the plan's investment income due to, once again, those historic rate increases that the Federal Reserve is putting in place. And for the second year in a row, of course, Rails received all APC grant revenues within the same fiscal year of the award. So the state cash flow situation has remained significantly improved. General fund revenues were approximately $120,000 above budget. And this is primarily due to additional unbudgeted grants from the state library for the continued development and maintenance of L2 and for the specialized cataloging, as well as another unbudgeted pandemic-related grant from FEMA. And then the general fund expenditures were above the budget by nearly $214,000. And Brad alluded to this. This was primarily due to the above budget capital outlays related to the implementation of the new lease accounting standard during fiscal year 22. So this lease standard required that we record our leases, and Brad, feel free to jump in at some point.
You're doing great. This is
Our lease standard required that we record our leases as assets on our balance sheet that we amortize over the entire term of the leases. And the object of this lease standard was to clarify that by entering into a lease, the lessee is actually purchasing the right to use that asset for a set length of time. And it's also attempting to, at the same time, quantify the interest component that is being charged to the lessee, which essentially represents the amount above and beyond the lessor's cost to maintain that lease facility. And this above budget cost, but also non-monetary cost, was partially offset by below budget contractual services expenditures due to lower than budgeted cataloging membership grant awards for libraries that are joining LSAPs, as well as savings from renegotiating our hosting fees from our Biblio board group purchase.
Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brad. Any clarifications on the new lease standard are appreciated too, if you want to add anything to what I said.
No, honestly, I think you've got it down better than I do. So no.
All right. Are there any questions related to the audit report? If not, thank you, Sharon and Brad. May I have a motion for acceptance of the audit report for fiscal year 2022?
So moved, Juanita Harrell.
Second, Julie Milliback.
Thank you. We do need a roll call for this item. Emily, would you please call roll?
Yes, Rosie Camargo. Here. Alice Creason.
Yes.
Juanita Harrell.
Yes.
Robin Hollenthal.
Yes.
Diane Hollister.
Yes.
Renee Leba.
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh.
Yes.
Milliback.
Yes.
Becky Spratford.
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Vanessa Villarreal. Karen Boydick.
Yes.
Monica Caldecott.
Yes.
And Alex Vancina.
Yes. All right. Next, we have a discussion of board compliance with statutes. Deirdre?
Yes, thank you. Well, this memo that's in your packet, as you can see from the date, this is not a new memo. This is something that we asked our attorney to do years ago and that we just give to you now every year at this time. Because when we do the area per capita grant application next year, next spring, we're required to certify that you are in compliance with various laws. It's right in the application. So we just provide you with these summaries, so you'll know what the laws are that you are certifying, or we are certifying on behalf of you that you are in compliance with them. So that's all it is for your information.
Are there any questions related to the memo? All right. Next up, we have 8.4, appointment of interim executive director. As Deirdre's last day will be November 18th, and it appears that we will not have a new executive director on board until February. May I have a motion to appoint Monica Harris as interim executive director of Rails as of November 18th, 2022, until a new executive director is hired and begins their duties?
I moved.
Would it be funnier if Monica gets the first one?
I think this one's me.
Yeah. Monica gets it first.
I move that we appoint Monica Harris, interim executive director of Rails.
I second it, Becky.
All right, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries. All right. Next, we have Dan Bostrom with a new member application.
Hey, thanks, Alex. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be with you virtually. It's great that a lot of you are in Peoria because this request is coming from across the river. The Riverview Community Consolidated School District number 2 is a small school district serving 215 students in East Peoria. So I was connected with Nikki Smith, actually through library staff at another Rails library. Nikki reported that they had been having some trouble with their current automation system, and she was interested in kind of researching her options. One of her options was to investigate RSA membership, and that ultimately led her to me. And I'm not sure if that will end up being where she ultimately goes. She's discussed a couple options, including Library World, Destiny, TLC, a few other options for them. But we had a great conversation. The district is really hoping to join Rails before, as Greg mentioned, the Illinois State Library's School District Library Grant, which is due October 15th. So if they can get in before that, they would love to do that, which would make them eligible. They're also interested in continuing education deals and discounts, being connected to other school libraries around the state. So I think that there'll be a great addition. Can I answer any questions from the board?
But before we vote on this, I understand that one of our board members has a personal connection to this school.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Tom, Tom, would you like to say a few words and make a motion for approval of full membership for USD?
Thank you, Alex. This elementary school was my brother's first role as a teacher in the system. And so I would like to request that we approve the Riverview Community Consolidated School District to the Rails system.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? No. Motion carries. Let's go ahead and move on to unfinished business. First, we have an update on the executive director search. The executive committee met with Bradbury Miller Associates on Monday, and we reviewed the process and timeline for the search. The timeline was emailed to all of you on Monday. Rails staff are in the process of getting material to the firm for the job posting, and Bradbury Miller will start to develop surveys for staff members and the board, which will help in creating the job ad. Does anyone have any questions about the timeline that was provided or the process in general?
Alex, I have a question because I'm going through this with Bradbury for my library. Are we supposed, which is fine because ours ends in December, so are we supposed to be saving all day January 24th and all day January 25th, but only one will be used, or we think we'll use both, or we're going to do half days? Do we have any sense? I mean, I blocked them both right now.
Yeah, I believe the expectation was that we need all of both days.
Right.
Is that correct?
This is Emily. I think that at this time they wanted to block them off because they don't know actually how many finalists will be, but the time frame of that. So it's just safer to block them off now.
That's great.
As we get closer into that, we'll have a better idea of how long we'll need of those days.
And those would be the days for the entire board. I'm just saying it out loud in case people missed it.
Yes.
In person?
Preferably, yeah. But I'm sure we could make accommodations for virtual if we had to. I'm looking at Dee like she's gonna be in a different state.
Yes. Well, we just need to have a quorum.
Right.
Obviously. And then,
Well, I have blocked them, sorry.
yeah. We just obviously want to give you plenty of notice.
Okay, any other questions for discussion? If not, next we have our board development topic, and Deirdre will be presenting some information regarding OCLC.
Yes, thank you. So I could talk for days about OCLC, but I won't. And I know that we librarians know a fair amount about OCLC. The non-librarians, trustees, not so much. And I should have, we should have talked about OCLC probably, years ago, but in any case, I wrote you a brief document, and it's, it was founded in 1967. Alex is smiling. I know you know a lot about OCLC. And it really was pretty revolutionary at the time because it provided a way for libraries, well, at that time, just the Ohio colleges, to share, to catalog resources online and to share the records. And so it was the beginning of the end of the card catalog, essentially, and the beginning of online catalogs, really, incredible resource sharing. And they, it expanded beyond Ohio pretty quickly, and they, over the years, they did many things beyond bibliographic records, particularly interlibrary loan, using the bibliographic records to share online or to do interlibrary loan online. And the OCLC, using WorldCat and using the OCLC applications, for lack of a better word, to, request items. I mean, that was a huge change, and a real boon for patrons in particular. Are you learning about this in your classes, Tom?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and there was a long period when OCLC had local network, regional networks, kind of like franchises almost. And like one of them, like in Illinois, I guess it was called Illinois. And in Massachusetts, it was called Nelanet, like New England. And the way it worked for a long time was that when I was in Massachusetts, and libraries really had nothing much to do with OCLC. They dealt with Nelanet. And then it was like a spoken wheel kind of thing, I guess. So, and Nelanet, was the way you got to the OCLC services. Well, then at a certain point, I would say maybe like 2000, OCLC began to eat its young. They began to dismantle these networks and go directly to libraries because they could make more money that way, frankly. And I mean, these were very famous networks. I mean, Solinet, and I mean, there are some very strong and really incredibly they did a lot of research, provided lots of, they're almost like, consortia are now in terms of the kind of services that they provided to medical libraries. So that all pretty much went away. That's what Lyrasis, a lot of you've heard of Lyrasis, that's what Lyrasis was before. Lyrasis was, I think it was Solinet, which was all the southeastern states, and it just fell apart, and it got re-put back together, but it's something different. So anyway, so in most states, most libraries, especially public libraries, don't have a close connection to OCLC. They don't belong to OCLC. They access OCLC through their state library or through regional interlibrary loan cooperatives, or like organizations like Rails or the LSAT. But in Illinois, at a certain point, and it was not a bad thing, but because you have to be a member of OCLC to have your holdings show in the OCLC database, as opposed to if just Rails were a member of OCLC and all our member libraries were not, you would only see the Rails holdings. And so it was deemed to be, better service to patrons to be able to act, to see the holding, really where the holdings were. And so what came of that was they called it explode. I think it was exploding the holdings. This was a decision made by the state library at the time that every library in Illinois would be a member of OCLC. This does not happen anywhere else in the country, just so everybody knows that. And over time, it began to be not such a good idea, because there's a lot of money gets spent on OCLC in Illinois, $5 million a year. We have a group services contract, and I learned several years ago that we are, in fact, state of Illinois is OCLC's biggest customer in the entire world, financially anyway. They have a huge global reach. And they, when I used to go to international library conferences, I mean, other countries they don't have the kind of, library system that we have, especially the public library system. And libraries are much more dependent on OCLC than we need to be. I mean, for basic things like just learning how to catalog or getting cataloging done. So anyway, dissatisfaction began to grow with OCLC. I would say certainly since the 90s, and since they got rid of their networks. And so there's this, one of the great acronyms of library land is Oclc, which is the International Coalition of Library Consortia. And that's a largely academic, but also multi-type. And, you know, I've been a part of that. Jane Plask before me was very involved in ICOLC. And they put together this, and Ann was on the task force too. This task force to look at some of the issues with OCLC, and this document that we gave you is their report. Now, you have access to this report because we are a member of ICOLC, and you therefore are also a member of ICOLC. But we did agree. ICOLC did agree with OCLC not to share it beyond ICOLC because they were extremely unhappy with this report. ICOLC did try, and ALA, Monica, you were at one of the meetings, did try to talk to OCLC about some of the issues related, you know, chiefly, if you look through the report, I mean, you know, chiefly to pricing and pricing transparency, and I'll get to that in a bit. The fact that they bundle their products so that even though, you know, obviously, you know, libraries, especially academic libraries, use OCLC for interlibrary loan much more than public libraries. You know, libraries in Swan, I mean, most of the consortia find all of, you know, pretty much 95–99% of what their patrons need within the consortium. They don't need to go out and use the OCLC interlibrary loan application, you know, but you can't get cataloging without interlibrary loan. And they do that with you know, because, and so we put this, you know, this report together, and, you know, they talk to us, you know, they say there's lots of misinformation, but they don't tell us what it is. And, you know, so there are alternatives to OCLC, and, you know, that, you know, we've heard, and some of you, if you at consortia committee, for example, have heard that, you know, Find More Illinois, that you know, that is an alternative to OCLC because you can use their records. The big, you know, the big legal issue is that the libraries are doing the cataloging. The libraries own the records, right? Own the books, and then put the records in and into WorldCat, into RSA, whatever. So the libraries own the records, the information, but OCLC has the WorldCat. And so there's this wrangle over, you know, OCLC claims that they own it, but they don't own it. They own the database, but they don't own the intellectual content. But they have a lot of money, and they have a lot of lawyers. And I mean, it's gotten ugly in, you know, I know Florida in particular. You know, Ann and I had some interesting conversations with Elijah Scott, who's kind of like me down there, and their state librarian, Amy, she basically like cut OCLC off, and they started using the autographic software, the shared software, and you know, OCLC threatened to sue them. I mean, can you imagine threatening to sue your own members? I mean, it's crazy stuff that goes on. And now there's a big lawsuit that, and I don't remember the details of that. And, you know, maybe one of you did Clarivate, but then I think Clarivate got bought by, was it ProQuest? I don't know. So anyway, there's a lawsuit that's going on now between OCLC and another vendor who OCLC claims is, you know, misusing their records, their property, their intellectual property. But if you look like on page 2 of my memo, just to look at, I mean, the pricing, enough to just make you go crazy just right there. And Grant, he put this together for us, and also for the task force when they put this report together. You can see in this chart that you have libraries that have very different budgets. I mean, here's a library that has a budget of $14 million, and they pay $3,000 a year for OCLC. When I was in Oak Park many years ago, we had a budget of about $5 million and a much smaller population than this library 4 here. And we paid $30,000 a year for
Yeah.
OCLC. I mean, that's just the kind of thing that just drive, yeah.
Well, then look at library 11, right?
Right.
It's similar budget and look at the difference from library 4.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and what they tell us is that, I mean, this is an ongoing conversation among librarians. Is that, well, it's because of when libraries joined and all of it is discounted in Illinois because of this group services contract we have. So that if they redo the pricing, because they won't look at it, they will not look at the price, they won't open it up, they won't tell us how they price things. Everything would go up. Nobody would go down, everybody would go up. So we really, they say we don't want them to do that. But I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, how can you, I mean, Grant and I were talking about it the other day, and I said, it's kind of like, if you go to Nordstrom, right? Nordstrom can tell you why something costs what it costs. And if there's a Nordstrom in California and a Nordstrom here, I mean, they probably have the same, merchandise, pretty much the same prices for things. This is like, I mean, it's like, that's just wildly illogical. But in Illinois, there's just this historical reliance on OCLC. I mean, when I think about what could be done with that $5 million, I mean, there's our database package right there, but it's just really hard to wean people away, and there's not. And that's one of the reasons that we're really trying to grow Find More, because we really think that Find More is the alternative, and it's very much cheaper. The alternative for bibliographic records as well as interlibrary loan on a larger scale. I mean, that was always Jane's and my vision. But it doesn't happen quickly. So anyway, I put that out there for you. I'm happy to talk about it, at future meetings as well, because there's a lot to get through here. And they, I'll tell you that this report includes the salary stuff, right? Is that in there? I think, yes. I mean, it's just, yeah. So they were very unhappy with that, but it's all true. It's all, I mean, the amount of money that the president of OCLC makes is just. And they claim they're a nonprofit, membership-driven organization, but now they also claim that they're a member-driven organization and a vendor, and they have so much money in the bank, billions of dollars. Right? So anyway, I'm not a fan, and I really wish that we could find a way to spend that money differently.
I am going to say in just a few months that I've been taking over resource sharing, Ann and I have had a few conversations with specific library people, and I know OCLC from years and years of starting as an interlibrary loan person. The psychic energy that people put, like the amount of, and shaking your head because like we have to battle this. You can't tell me not to have OCLC. Like it's like you're asking for their firstborn, because it's so ingrained in what people and my age, but younger than me too. It's still so ingrained, even though Ann and I can go in there with our statistics and our discussion and tell them like, but, they could say, and new contracts are being done all the time. I think Swan just did a brand new contract recently with OCLC, which looking at this and knowing that, it seems, as somebody in Swan, does not seem fair in any way. So there's a lot of, this is very good information to know. It's an uphill battle, but it's true because at ALA, they were pushing the vendor thing this year. Like they're a vendor now. It was a totally different messaging from the last time we were in person that I noticed immediately. So I think we have like you said, with Find More Illinois, we have something that we can give people that will save them so much money, and we can use that money for other things. But it's interesting. There's psychic energy there that is
It's gonna take time.
It is.
So I don't know what the catalogers have to say about this. I don't know, what do you think about it all, Robin?
It's one of those where I'm not currently
I
cataloging,
know,
but I'm watching what goes around the
Yeah.
room, and I've done some of the RSA classes, just so I want to understand, because I had one years and years ago. But the hoops, I mean, and the interlibrary loan person that's in our office, and she comes through and I've got to have this way, and I've got to have this way, and I got to do it this way, and it's like, you know, I can go and get this through like some of these books through RSA. I just have to know where to go, or, you know, or it's easier just to order the book and get it in and have it in your own collection. Because there's so many things that you cannot get through them, because if it's like six months, yeah, and you can't interlibrary loan it. So you're gonna buy it anyway. So, yeah, I just know that, you know, in all the years that I've been around tech services, it's, you know, OCLC was the thing. And
Yeah, sure, and it
Yeah.
was for a long time.
yeah,
But
and even
things
in
change.
classes and stuff that you
Yeah.
took in school, OCLC was the go-to
Sure.
for whatever you were going to do, interlibrary loan or cataloging. That was the, you know, holy grail.
There are options.
Great thing what they did, but now there are options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're still presenting it that way, you know, in school, because that's how I was taught, and that's what they kept
Pushing, yeah.
CLC in all of our classes where we dealt with any type of cataloging. So I just am curious, you know, that if, are they still?
Yeah, that's a good question.
that you want?
Not in Florida. I will say, Ann and I spoke to a cataloger who's an original cataloger at a small library, and we had a meeting. This person's original cataloger for OCLC and for Swan, and could not give us a good reason why OCLC was needed beyond that there was just a connection between Swan and, like, that was the only argument. So that's,
There needs to be a connection to something.
right, but there's no like cataloging reason. I mean, that wasn't, it didn't have to do with that, because there's enough original catalogers now in Swan who don't need the OCLC records, because they all band together. So there's, you know, for example.
This is many decades
Yeah.
now in the history of the Illinois libraries and the history of Illinois of OCLC at one time being required.
Yeah.
And that's no longer required, but that perception is definitely.
It's still there.
In many ways.
Did you want to say anything, Alex? Oh,
No,
yeah.
Renee and Jennifer had their hands up.
I just wanted to say one thing. This is obviously Renee. Does Monica have the same viewpoint as you, Dee? The only reason is because with you leaving us in November, this might be something that's gonna surpass November. So we just want to make sure that there's someone who that was next to you that understands fully the whole concept of what we should be doing. And especially if we're going to be interviewing a new director, I would personally want to make sure that those type of views are also aligned with them. So I just want to, whoever is writing up interview questions, one of the things going to be, what are your thoughts of OCLC?
I mean, for a system director, that's actually a big question. You're right, Renee.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. So Monica, yes.
I mean, here's what I would say is that I think any interim is in a position to keep the organization moving in the same direction. I could say personally, my view is that OCLC, for many of the reasons outlined here, is way beyond the scope of what, especially in Illinois, libraries need to be considering paying. I did come from a library personally as a public library director that was paying a very low amount for OCLC compared to its budget. And I do think that there is real inequity in Illinois when it comes to those services, and it is something that we have to continue. That said, so much of my knowledge of OCLC has come during my time at Rails, because as a public library director, I did take it for granted that OCLC was just part of what we did. And so other options had not really occurred to me. And so I have really relied on the kind of information Anne knows, that Dee knows, and that Jane Class before me had worked on very carefully, and that work that has been done with Oclc. So I think there are great resources out here for anyone who is going to be the executive director of this organization to be able to pursue.
Jennifer.
Right. I have very conflicted feelings about OCLC because I think they're pretty important when you're looking for resource sharing outside of your local area with academic libraries. I'd say we rely on resource sharing through OCLC. When we need ILL, it really is usually coming from somewhere else, outside of Carly even, right? So we're with iShare, and the cataloger at our library is very passionate about what she gets from OCLC. She prefers to catalog there and then import our records into iShare because she has access to a much larger pool of records to work with from the beginning. So for her, she considers it indispensable. And I'm sure there are probably some other catalogers out there who would agree with her. But it's interesting because you mentioned ProQuest, Clarivate, the whole iShare is built on Alma, and they are really kind of posing themselves as in competition with OCLC. They really push you to use the records that are within their network zone, but we don't find that they're helpful for us because we're actually doing a lot of original cataloging, not because they're research materials, but because we're cataloging a lot of things that are industry resources, things that don't, because we work with a lot of career and technical programs, things like that, materials that don't necessarily make it into public collections and don't make it into research collections. So like these, we find we need access to OCLC to kind of support our workflows better. But yeah, and I'm kind of conflicted because the alternative so if OCLC kind of dissipates as a Illinois state resource, as an academic library, it pushes us closer and closer to having to rely on the network zone in Alma, and that makes me uncomfortable. So I'm concerned about if the group purchasing, group buying power goes away. It's already quite expensive for us to get OCLC, and I wonder what it would look like without the group buy. It makes me very uncomfortable, but we need to keep talking about it.
But they won't tell us,
Right.
And the fact that you have to buy everything, you can't just buy cataloging or extra library. I mean, there's just a lot of issues, and that's, and they're not the only game in town anymore. And I think they need to be held accountable for a lot of things that they just get away with stuff. So
actually, I have a question. I think it's probably for Greg. Isn't the group services contract up for the Illinois State Group? Isn't it up for RFP this year?
Yes, during the next 12 months, we'll be looking for something that would begin July 1 of 24.
Okay. My procurement department requires me to provide all of the RFP documentation for me to get approval to pay the OCLC bill to you guys. So I'm always constantly monitoring the website where you have the information to look for the most up-to-date information. So I don't know if other people are in the same boat as me, but I need every last piece of documentation to give them. So.
I'm not in any way saying that they don't provide a lot of great service, particularly to academic libraries. I just think this all or nothing situation is really unhealthy and not a good use of tax dollars. But like I say, it's going to take a while, and I do think that having to find more available, and listening to their president Paul Cope talk about why the various agreements that he never signed with OCLC, exactly for the reason that he wants to be able to share the records in different ways, and OCLC can't stop him because he never said that they wouldn't. And I'll have to send you all the member rights and responsibilities statement in the OCLC in the agreement, because it says that, member libraries can share the records that we have the right. I mean, we did the work. We created the records, and we have the right to share them. But somehow they don't say that when they're, slapping you with a lawsuit. So, anyway, to be continued. Do you want to say something, Tom, about what?
No. I have to use a page too often in catalog.
Yeah. I thought my career as a cataloger. So there. Nobody believes that anymore.
Thank you for the information, Dee.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to Rails board member reports. Now is the time for board members to share any news about their area or library. Does anyone have a report to share?
That he does. Please, anyone watching this, anyone in this room, we do have with Bradbury Miller an open executive director position at the LaGrange Public Library. You go to the LaGrange Public Library website, or the Bradbury Miller page directly, or the Rails job board. It was also posted in the ILA alert this week. It's a great job. We have a full salary listed there. We are, I'd like to say this out loud, we have been a library for people's first director job. A lot of the last two directors we had, we know that. We know people move on from us. We're not large. When there was MLS, it was Jeannie Dilger, was one of the consultants, and then Charity, who just left us for New York State, was the assistant director at Rockford. And she liked to say when she left, they had to replace her with two people. So, and we're very sad to see her go, but it's for family reasons and it's been great for her. But we are open till Sunday, October 9th. So anybody out there who hears this, anybody who's listening who knows someone, we would love to see lots of applicants for that job. So thank you.
And I would love to share good news from our library. Vernon Hills High School Library was named an exemplary school library from our state school library educators association. And we are very glad for the recognition of the hard work that we're doing to make our library the heart of our school. So yay. We had a party this week and the kids lined up for cake as if they had never seen cake in their life. Awesome.
That's wonderful.
I have two things. At Alpha Park Library, we have a new director at Alpha Park Library, and she is with us here today. Amy Harris.
Super happy to be here. Thank you, Tom.
And we also received a grant from PLA that was Rails put it on their Instagram account yesterday. So that was really exciting to see that on there.
What was the grant for?
What was it for?
The PLA grant for technology.
Yeah, the technology.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Great.
it's two great things we've had in our libraries.
Yeah, excellent. That's our great.
All right. Meeting recap and agenda building for the next Rails board meeting. I'm sure we'll hear more about OCLC in future meetings. The executive committee will continue to work with Bradbury Miller. We should have the finalized job posting to share with you shortly in advance of our board meeting in October. I hope all of you will be able to join us at ILA for the reception for Deirdre on Tuesday, October 19th from 5 to 7 p.m. And our next board meeting will be held on Friday, October 28th at 1 p.m. If there's nothing further to discuss, then I will adjourn this meeting at 3:03 p.m. Thank you all.